Hello everyone. Okay, today we're going to be talking about reasons for the rise of Hitler. In order to help you understand this chapter better, okay, you can always read pages 63 to 73 of your textbook. So before we really start studying about the reasons for the rise of Hitler, in the next slide I'm going to show you the position of Germany in terms of its geographical landscape and where it is located. Okay, Germany is located right in the middle between France and Poland. You can see Britain on the side that's divided by the sea, and you can see that Russia is not too far away as well. Okay, so these countries are going to come into play when we talk about Germany, so just have them at the back of your mind. Okay, now our objective for today's lesson is to really understand why, okay, the reason why Hitler rose to power in 1933. In my slide, I've classified the reasons under two main arguments. Okay, reason number one is favorable circumstances, and reason number two is leadership abilities. Under favorable circumstances, there are three sub-arguments. Number one, weakness of the Weimar Government. Number two, hyperinflation. And number three, the Great Depression. Okay, when we see the word favorable circumstance, we want to ask ourselves, what does that mean? So let's go back to Stalin for a while. Can you name me one favorable circumstance that actually helped Stalin rise to power? Okay, I hope you're thinking, and this is one possible answer that you could have given me in return, okay, which is Lenin's death. Lenin's death was very timely, and it allowed Stalin to make use of that opportunity for him to rise to power. So in the same way, when we talk about Hitler's rise to power in terms of favorable circumstances, really what we are looking at is the opportunities that were provided for Hitler to even rise to power in the first place. Our main objective today will be to study about the favorable circumstances and how that led to the rise of Hitler. So for Hitler's leadership, we'll keep it to another day. Okay, before we even start talking about the reasons, let's just do a very quick check on whether we are able to identify the symbols and characteristics which make up Hitler. Okay, number one, the swastika sign. Okay, you will always see this on his uniform. This is a very symbolic image for Hitler. Number two, the Hail Hitler sign. Okay, number three, his mustache, which you guys remember very well. Okay, and number four, his hair, which is side swept to the side. So these are four symbols that can be used to identify Hitler. Who exactly then is Adolf Hitler? We know about the fact that he carried out the Holocaust, we know about the concentration camps, but we don't quite know much about his background in his childhood. So I'm going to just touch a little bit on that. His life. Okay, he is actually an Austrian. He's an Austrian-born German politician. He fought with Germany against the Allies in World War I. Okay, over the years, he felt a need to build up his power. Okay, maybe need is the wrong word, but he felt a want, a desire to build up his power and to become very powerful in Germany. So there'll be times along the way, okay, when after World War I, he will try to get rid of the present government, of the government that was present in Germany back then. So in 1923, he was actually jailed for trying to overthrow the government. But somehow or another, in 1933, he became the chancellor. So 10 years after being jailed, he will become one of the most influential figures in Germany. Okay, we'll find out the reasons why later. And in 1945, with the coming of the end of World War II, Hitler will pass away. He is one man, but he actually has several names, starting with the Chancellor, where he's the head of government in Germany in 1933. He will have a lot of power, but at this stage, he's not the most powerful man yet in Germany. He will only be the most powerful in 1934, where he will be officially addressed as the Führer. So what happens is the president will pass away, and he will combine the powers of the Chancellor and the president to become the Führer. By this stage, he is the most powerful in Germany, and whatever he says is the law. He's also often called a dictator, okay, authoritarian leader, similar to how Stalin was, very brutal in their ways. Okay, and last but not least, he's the leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the short form Nazi Party. So, let's go back to Germany. What exactly was Germany like before Hitler rose to power? Okay, think back. What did we learn about Germany during World War I? Okay, let me give you some hints. Okay, first hint. Something happened between 1914 and 1918. Do you know what happened? Okay, there was World War I. World War I was extremely catastrophic for Germany. They suffered a lot, and more importantly, they did not lose the war according to the Germans. However, despite the fact that they signed a ceasefire, and yet they were treated as if they lost the war. Okay, that brings me to my second hint. Okay, reparations. I hope this brings to mind the Treaty of Versailles. Many Germans were very angry with the Treaty of Versailles because they felt that they didn't lose the war. Why should they be punished so harshly? Okay, and all the reparations really made it extremely hard for the Germans to stand back on their feet after a war. The reparations just made them weaker and weaker and weaker. So the situation in Germany itself, okay, there was massive devastation. You can see from the picture that the infrastructure was just terrible. Okay, there was food shortage. There was broken families, okay, families that lost their loved ones during World War I. And there was also massive unemployment. Okay, all these tends to happen when a war occurs in a country. So at this stage, the government that came to power after the Treaty of Versailles was called the Weimar Government. Okay, you can tell by the number of the years that they are there that they had a very short run. Okay, less than 20 years. And from here, I hope you can infer that there were some problems with them. That's why they were not able to last as long. So, we are now going to the first reason behind Hitler's rise to power. Okay, and that reason is the weakness of the Weimar government. In this table here, okay, all you see is the many reasons or the many weaknesses of the Weimar government. In total, you have 4 here. This corresponds to the information in your textbook. So what I have done is to summarize the different arguments. Okay, I'm going to touch on the 4 briefly, but in class, if you have questions, you can always ask me. Okay, so number 1. The first weakness, okay, or in my opinion, the most symbolic weakness over here. They had this system called proportional representation. Okay, when you think of the word proportional, think of the idea of ratio. The parties are given seats in government according to the number of votes they receive. Okay, I'll elaborate more on this later. But the idea behind this is because whichever party gets a number of votes, that party is going to be part of the Weimar government. Okay, it's like a democracy. So what happens in the end is that there are going to be many different parties. And these parties do not all have the same view about how Germany should run. This results in what we call a high degree of fragmentation, divide within the government. And because they are not able to get along, okay, the ability and efficiency and effectiveness of the Weimar government reduces. Okay, it becomes harder for them to implement policies, and over time, the Germans start losing trust in the Weimar government and decide to turn towards people like Hitler who say, I'm going to solve the problems for you. Okay, second weakness, coalition government. The parties came together to form coalition governments, and between 1919 and 1933 alone, there were 20 different coalition governments. So from here already you can tell, okay, there are multiple changes within the Weimar government. They are not stable and they are not effective. They are not able to last long as well. Okay, weakness number 3, Article 48 of Weimar Constitution. This article gave the president powers to declare emergency. However, what constituted emergency was not defined. So when a president declares emergency, what that means is that the whole country is as good as being under a lockdown. Okay, whatever the president says, the citizens have to follow. Their civil rights are taken away, their civil liberties are taken away because of the state of emergency, where they assume or they prioritize the state over the citizens' rights. This particular thing about Article 48, we'll go more in depth later in the chapter, but to give you a rough idea of what will happen, Hitler will take advantage of Article 48 when he becomes the Chancellor, and he will declare emergency during this famous incident called the Reichstag fire. Okay, we'll learn about that in the next part of the chapter. And number 4, weak support or opposition. as I mentioned, okay, within the Weimar government itself, there were people with many different views. You have your right wing versus your left wing. You have people who supported communism, and then you have people who supported fascism, or people who supported liberalism, or many different ideas. So there are three different instances in which people within the Weimar government themselves fought. Okay, I'm not going to go through these three because the information is in your textbook. It's good for you to know. Just roughly read and understand what exactly is happening. So the main idea here is that there's so much division within the parties that it increased the inefficiency of the government. Okay, over time, they are not able to implement policies, they are not able to solve unemployment, they are not able to solve the devastation Germany faced, and therefore they turn to people like Hitler and the other extremist parties who said, I can solve it, so give me a chance. So earlier on, I mentioned to you that I'll go a bit deeper into proportional representation, right? So this is basically how proportional representation looks like. Okay, the parties that get more votes, they get more seats. So you can tell from here that the Social Democratic Party is in the lead. There's 100 seats total, okay, and they're all split. You have so many different parties and therefore so many different views. Okay, just think about it this way. You want to design a t-shirt, you want to just choose a color. If you go to class and you tell your classmates, okay, let's have it as pink color, what are the odds that everyone's going to agree? Almost zero, right? In the same way, how it's so difficult to come up with a t-shirt, think about it in a political scale. Okay, you have all these different political parties wanting the t-shirt to be a different color, and there's no way they're going to agree on it because fundamentally they disagree with how Germany should be ruled. So this made the Weimar government / Weimar Republic extremely weak. So our main question, or rather our so what, our explanation. How exactly did the weakness of the Weimar government lead to the rise of Hitler? Number one, they are unable to implement effective policies. Because of this, the Germans lose trust in the Weimar government and they turn their attention to Hitler, who promised a strong government and gave him their support. Okay, Hitler will say later on that he's going to make sure he has a strong central government, which is more effective than the Weimar government. So far, so good. Okay, I hope you're doing well so far. Okay. Now let's move to the second reason. Hyperinflation. If you recall, you learned about hyperinflation in Sec 2 when we talked about Japanese currency in Singapore. Okay, we didn't really use the word hyperinflation, but we did use the idea of inflation. So I'm going to give you a very simple idea behind inflation because it's quite a complex economic term. Hyperinflation, okay, to put it I'll give you the simple idea first. Okay, you always think about for balloon when you think of inflation, right? The more you inflate a balloon, what happens in the end? Eventually it will pop and it will burst. Okay, in the same way, hyperinflation occurs when the government prints way too much money. Okay, and the money loses its value. That's when hyperinflation occurs. So to give you an idea and a background behind why hyperinflation had to occur in the first place. Okay, for some time, the value of the mark, the German money, was already dropping. Okay, as the value of the notes decreased, the amount of notes needed to buy things grew. Okay, banks became more and more hard-pressed to meet the ever-increasing demand for paper money, and suitcases replaced wallet. Okay, let me give you an idea behind what is going on now. You think about it. Okay, last time, I have one pen. This one pen is the only pen in the whole world. Extremely valuable, right? Okay, versus I have 1,000 pen and everybody has it. Okay, the value decreases. So in the same way, if I were to have only a $2 note and everybody else seems to have like a 50-cent coin or whatever, my $2 is extremely valuable. Okay, but over time, it appears that everybody seems to have this $2 note. So the value starts to decrease. So there was already a problem with the currency at this stage. Okay, but the problem here with the Weimar government is that they made it worse by printing more money to solve problems. One of the problems that they faced was the strike at the Ruhr. Okay, if you recall in chapter 1, we learned about the Ruhr crisis in 1923 when France took back the Ruhr because Germany was not able to pay back the reparations. The strikers, the German workers, they refused to work for the French and therefore they went on a strike. The Weimar government, trying to solve the problem of the economy in Germany, what they did was to just print more money. They print more money and they gave it to the strikers to try and pacify them to go back to work. However, this worsened the problem of inflation because the money lost its value. So it cost more and more to pay wages and buy food. Whatever was printed on the notes really meant nothing anymore. Okay, the German mark was so worthless that people were doing all kinds of crazy things with it because the value just dropped. Okay, let me show you how useless it was at that point of time. Okay, these are the uses of German money. Okay, number one, you see kids making kites out of the German currency. Okay, number two, you see them build money mountains, okay, as a form of play for the kids. Number three, people actually use the money to light their stoves because the money was so valuable. The money really doesn't mean anything anymore. They must use it to cook food than to buy something. Okay, for children to play with, you can see them cutting the money up. Okay, so all that you have seen so far is the different situation. You have seen the worthlessness of the German money. So you think about it, imagine all your life you've been saving up money. And then overnight, because the government has printed so much money, whatever money you've saved, it really becomes worthless. So I want you to be able to understand the desperation that people felt at this point of time. So back to the question, right? How did hyperinflation lead to the rise of Hitler? Number one, the Weimar government loses the support and trust of the Germans, and the Germans increasingly turn to other candidates or parties who could gain their trust. Having said that, unlike the previous explanation, you notice that I did not make a direct link to Hitler here. The reason why is the hyperinflation incident occurred in the 1920s. Okay, still very early on because Hitler will only rise to power in 1933. So hyperinflation cannot be said to be a direct reason for Hitler's rise to power, but rather it can be said as a reason for why people lost the trust that they had in the Weimar government. Okay, money is worthless, savings gone, they can barely buy anything with the money, they have to carry around their suitcases because their wallets cannot fit all those notes. Okay, and they are just kids playing with the money because it really means nothing anymore. But that doesn't mean everything was bad. Okay, we have Gustav Stresemann. Okay, basically he's the Chancellor of Germany in 1923, and he tried to make things better. Okay, he introduced a new currencies to stabilize, to get rid of all those worthless notes and to restart again the economy. He managed to persuade the French to retreat from the Ruhr, so they got back control over the industrial area. And in 1924, he also managed to get loans from USA to help Germany with its reparation payments and for them to have a longer time period in which they can pay back. So it looked as if things were getting better for a very, very short time. Okay, you can see the metaphor here. There's finally light in darkness. However, we have the Great Depression, which occurs in 1929. Okay, I hope you've watched the video. It's a wrap. Okay, pretty interesting way of portraying the Great Depression. But let me summarize it out. Okay, number one, the Great Depression started when the US stock market crashed. So how exactly does the stock market crash? Okay, there was a period of time where Americans were very wealthy. So they were investing a lot of their money in stocks. But what happened is, the problem with stocks is that when there is a general scare, okay, and one or two people start taking out their money from the company, people tend to be reactive and they start to take out their money as well. So whatever money that that particular bank or the particular company had, overnight or in a couple of nights, they lose all the investments and all the money. So the company goes bankrupt. And when the company goes bankrupt, they are not able to pay their workers, there's high unemployment. And at the same time, in the case of USA, you must remember that they were rich, but during the Great Depression, they themselves were suffering from an economic crisis. So there's money that's going out to Germany, right? They decided to take it back. And this is the real problem here. When they recall the loans back from Germany, Germany suffers again because they realize they are in the same problem again. Okay, their reparations are still not paid fully, their economy is still not stable. Any hope that they had via the previous chancellor it just went to null, okay, went to waste. Because the Great Depression was so impactful that so many other countries were affected. Okay, you must always remember that economies are not unique or specific to one particular country. USA was one of the strongest, most powerful, so they had a lot of allies, a lot of trading partners. When they decide to stop trading with other countries and to focus on their own goods and their own people, countries everywhere suffer. Not just Germany, you also have Britain suffering, you have France suffering, and you will also learn about Japan suffering later on in the year. But in this case here, Germany suffered very, very, very badly. And more importantly, I think it was just a losing hope. Okay, the Germans were just losing hope because things didn't seem to be improving no matter how hard they tried. So how exactly did the Great Depression lead to the rise of Hitler? Okay, at this stage, the Weimar government almost completely lost the support and the trust of the Germans. Germans were angry and upset because no matter how much they tried, things just didn't improve. So they turned to other candidates and parties such as the Nazi Party, who promised to strengthen German economy and give them jobs. With that, okay, we have come to the end of the 3 sub-reasons behind favorable circumstances. I hope you have a brief understanding of the problems that the Weimar government was plagued with, as well as the economic crisis that was going on. In the next lesson, I just want you to mentally prep yourself and think about the way in which we can classify reasons. In history, there are 2 ways we can look at reasons. We can look at them in terms of whether or not they are the secondary cause or they are the root cause. So when we say something is a root cause, we are really thinking about something that's more fundamentally problematic. And when we say something is a secondary cause, we are looking at the superficial or top level reason why something occurs. Okay, you can see the iceberg analogy here. A ship does not sink because of the ice at the top, but rather the solid structure at the bottom. So I want you to think about which of these 3 reasons was the most important reason behind why Hitler rose to power. Okay, with that we are done. Enjoy your day and I'll see you next week.